Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. I have the agenda here. Did you give me one?
I think it's under your.
All right, we'll call this meeting to order. And in the spirit of Nquantual, we would like to commit to a deep understanding of their history and truth as we help each other find the way. With that, can I ask someone to make a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Demare. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. And regional moment, Area D.
Okay, so I've got a few things that I'm going to say first, and then Natalie is going to share some pictures with us. So I just thought I'd skim around some of the communities within Area D and highlight some of the issues at the moment. The Upper Squamish Valley, we have considerable problems up there, and you're going to hear a lot about the Upper Squamish Valley in the next year or two. Problems with events, with noise complaints, and we're working on some solutions. Kim is preparing some stuff that we're going to be able to use to try to control some of the event situations. We have a meeting coming up in November that Sarah McJanet from Squamish, and I believe Claire, you've taken over from Alex there. Yeah. They're convening this meeting with realtors who operate in that area to get them to fully understand what you can do with agricultural land and what you can't, because there have been some false messaging that has gone out with realtors in the past. We'll be having some sort of joint efforts with the ALC. So there'll be some positive things that will be coming to the board to try to solve some of the issues that are happening up there. Pinecrest and Blacktas Village, they had an unfortunate fire just over a year ago now. Their little community all burned down, and they've been able to replace it. I haven't seen the new building, but it's done, and they were very happy with the insurance because the initial claim was settled pre-COVID or around COVID, and then when they got around to doing the work, the costs had gone up by about, well, considerably. So they went back to the insurance company, and the insurance company just showed them and gave them more money to cover it, which was great. And we just put last EAD, we had an approval for $12,000 to provide some picnic tables and some other stuff at that. So I'm looking forward to stopping in there sometime and checking the new stuff. Ring Creek, the Salker put together a plan to build a parking lot at the trailhead for Garibaldi Park, and they did a super job. They did a lot of work, and they got approval from the ministries involved. And basically, it came to District of Squamish and to us with the plan already, and just wanted some money. And so Suzanne is working with them right now to provide some money from our gas tax funds, and that car park will be able to go ahead. And the significance of it for the Ring Creek residents is it will get those cars off the road. They've been parking on the road, which is pretty dangerous from a number of perspectives, and it will really help that situation. It looks like we're just about ready to order a new fire truck for Britannia, and that's welcome news. And that's the end of me nattering. I'm going to have Natalie show a few pictures now. So I think a year or so ago, a young man came to me and wanted to, probably 18 months ago now, he came to me, he wanted to know what do I have to do if I want to build a coffee shop. And I directed him to Kim and to other staff, and he is, you get lots of those kinds of inquiries. I want to open this business, I want to do that, I want to do something else. And most of them you never hear of again. this guy has just plugged away at it. This is the pullout as you're coming towards Britannia. It's between Furry Creek. It's where the you can see on the right hand side there is the old Galileo coffee shop. So it's in that area. And when I saw the drawings for his little shack that he wanted, I thought it was going to be quite small. You know, I thought it was going to be about 8 feet and just nothing much happened. But that's it. Number 2, Natalie, please. So that's the close. Those 2 windows are going to be takeout windows. And at the right-hand end of that, that's where the kitchen is. And he's going to be doing stuff like pizza slices and easy takeaway stuff. Next one. This one is his little cafe. And you can see it's got those huge windows. Now you might think, why has he got big windows like that? Well, if you're at that site and you look across the road, you've got nothing on the other side of the road. You've got this beautiful vista of the sound and mountains. And when Galileo was open, anytime in the summer you went past there were people taking pictures there. So that's a great location. And the roof, he's having a patio up on the roof so that people can, in good weather, go and sit up there. And as I say, the view is spectacular. And thank you. That's the next one. And that's his public toilets, which are between his cafe and the old Galileo building. Maybe it doesn't look very big, but it's big enough. And they're going to be open whether his facility is open or not. And he's already had truckers stopping in there and saying, we can't wait for this to be open because it's the only place, once you leave Vancouver, it's the only place they can stop to get something to eat and drink between there and Pemberton. Now they can't pull into Squamish, not those big rigs, you know. Can't really pull into Whistler anywhere. So this place, I think he's going to make a killing. Yeah. Pull in there, go and get a coffee and a slice of pizza, and off they go. And next one, please. Okay, so now we're going to the commercial area of Britannia, and I showed you the last time I did this where they were at, and this is one of the old pictures. That's the community hall, and you can see there it's been put on its foundation. So if you look at the next picture, behind it, sorry, on the left was the that building at the back there. Is the old general store, which previously had been a cinema. Okay, so next one, Natalie. So those 2 buildings have been moved now, and you can see some of the work that they're doing. It's an awful lot of work. The windows at the end of this yellow building, that's an apartment. That's one of the rental apartments that they're building there. And I forget what the commercial use of the front part of the building is, but it's where it faces onto the actual sort of village square area, and it's a commercial outlet. Next one. That's the old schoolhouse, and that's the picture that I showed you a few months ago. And so the next one, that's basically from the same angle, so it gives you some idea of how much fill they've already brought in there, and there's still more to come. The low building on the left is the childcare, and yeah, that I think is pretty well up to where it's going to be. And on the right-hand side at the back, you can see some of the townhouses that are already under construction. Next one. This again is one of the old pictures. That little building in the front there on the left is going to be a significant building in the commercial centre when it's done, because that's half the pub. And so next picture. On the left-hand side there, those sort of 2 buildings have been placed next to each other. One of them is that building that I just told you was going to be the pub. It's been moved around to there. Those 2 buildings combined will be the pub, and you can see it. These pictures are not very good, are they? You can see the concrete in front of it. That's where the patio is. And if I could have got up on there and taken a picture for you, looking at the sound, you'd see what an incredible view that's going to be. So you'll be able to sit out there and enjoy Coca-Cola or something like that, with an umbrella and looking out over the sounds. It's going to be great. And the big building there, that's still up on its stilts. It'll be set down on its foundation soon. And you can see on the right-hand side, there's an entryway that'll be into a business. And the left end, where there's that sort of gable roof, that fence is going to be punched out there, and that'll be another entrance to another business. Next one. Where am I at? Let's see. Townhouses. They just started putting siding on the townhouses. Next one. And that's the row of them. That's Copper Drive. So I'm standing with my back to the museum, and so I'm taking the picture from there. And our fire hall is just up to the right. So I'll give you some idea of where that's located. And you can see on the left-hand end, you can see that siding that's just going on that I just showed you in the previous picture. We're finished with Britannia. We now move to Squamish. This is the hospice, and this is the gazebo at the back of the hospice. And Russell, I wanted to put that in there to show you, because Russ and I put money from Area D and Area C to pay for that. And again, I'm taking that from the garden. I should have taken a picture of the garden as well, because again, Area C and Area D combined to pay for the garden. So this is located behind the hospice. It's a really nice, quiet, private area, and it really completes that sort of whole hospice scene. Yeah, and before you go to the last one, I ended up putting a picture on by accident, when you're transferring from one thing to another. And of course, it's got nothing to do with Area D. It's got nothing to do with anything to do with the SLRD. But I left it on there. It's for you, Vivian.
Holy. Where are you there?
I'm in Guildford.
Costa Rica?
No, Guildford, Surrey, in England. And a friend of ours has about 3/4 of an acre. And on that 3/4 of an acre, she has half a dozen goats and a donkey and turkeys and ducks and chickens, peacocks and peahens as well. So I thought you'd like to see that. That's it, I'm done. Area D is finished. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Okay. Do we have to close?
No.
No. Okay, we're gonna skip number 4. We will go to almost right on time. Oh, we just need a minute. Is Inspector Dykstra not coming in person?
He's in the waiting room. No.
Okay. No problem.
Shall we bring him in now? Nice guy.
Good morning, Inspector Dykstra. We just need 1 minute. Thank you for being here. Okay, Natalie.
Good. That's the rest of the day.
Okay, good morning, Inspector Dykstra. Thank you very much for being here. It's nice to see you. It's been a while since we've had you here. We have 10 minutes for your presentation and a few minutes for questions. So we'll turn the floor over to you. Oh, we can't hear you. You need to unmute.
There we go. I'm used to MS Teams there. I get a little confused when I get onto Zoom. Good morning. As soon as the presentation jumps up there, I'll jump right into it so we can have maximum amount of time for questions. Perfect. Good morning, everyone. My name is Robert Dykstra. I'm the inspector in charge of the Sea to Sky RCMP, which is responsible for the entire Sea to Sky area, which includes Whistler, Pemberton, Squamish, and Bowen Island, and the provincial areas that are surrounded or in that area as well. You can go next slide. Just a very high level overview in terms of our senior management team. Again, as noted, I'm the officer in charge of the area. I have a number of other senior managers that help with the running of operations and administrative support within the area. Amanda Daly, who's our administrative manager that works at a Squamish. She takes care of my day-to-day and as well our year-to-year, all of our administrative functions within the Sea to Sky. From a senior member perspective, I have Staff Sergeant Sasha Banks and Staff Sergeant Gareth Bradley, which I know most of you know, who are also part of my senior management team. We're the ones that make all the decisions and do all of the high-level discussions about how we do business, what our priorities need to be, deal with the issues of the day, and try to make sure that the service we're providing is the best possible. Next slide, please. From an operational perspective as well, it's important to note that, again, as I said, we're divided into a number of different units in different areas. In Squamish, we have Gareth Bradley, who's in charge of Squamish. Whistler, Staff Sergeant Sasha Banks. In Bowen Island, we have Corporal Adam Coey. In Pemberton, we have Corporal Scott Langtree. And of course, we're also supported by a general investigations section, which supports the entire Sea to Sky. I wanted to stop here for 1 second because I think it's really important for us to understand and recognize that as a Sea to Sky, we have multiple different contracts and we're responsible for multiple different areas. Again, with Whistler and Squamish, for example, these are municipal police service agreements, and they are funded by the municipality and the province jointly based on the level of population. But we also do have provincial members that work in those detachment offices that are responsible technically for the provincial area policing in and around that area, so the SLRD areas that are in those spaces. The way we function, however, isn't that we have an individual response team for provincial calls. Those members just fill the operational watches as they exist. And so therefore we have a 24/7 response, both provincially and municipally in those areas. You might get a municipal member from Squamish that responds or a provincial member that responds. I know this has been a concern from our municipal side of things, but we've been able to demonstrate over time that the number of people that we have that provide that provincial support doesn't really draw too heavily back on the municipal side. We are doing an accountability review currently, and there's going to be a fair amount of change and communication around what that looks like going forward and whether we have the appropriate number of resources to support. But I just want you to be aware that that's kind of how we provide that service. Of course, when we get to Bowen and Pemberton, well, Bowen is its own little entity. And then in Pemberton, Scott Langtree. That again, sometimes we say Pemberton, it becomes confusing. People think, oh, it's just Pemberton. It's not. It's Pemberton and the surrounding SLRD area in and around Pemberton. And they obviously work very closely with Statlium. And then from the general investigations section, there's a mixture of provincial and municipal members that form this team, and they serve the entire area for any of our major serious crimes that fall outside the mandate of the divisional major crime, IHIT, and other specialized sections. So I just wanted to cover that off. Next slide, please. I'm going to just give a very high-level overview of our strategic plan. As we move forward over the next year, I want to be more engaged with SLRD as a whole. I think it's important that we do have our regular meetings. We do discuss the priorities for policing in the area to make sure that what we are doing as a regional detachment meets the needs of the population that live in the SLRD area that don't or aren't supported by a direct municipal contract. So it's important that we are meeting those needs and dealing with those priorities as well. So we do have a strategic plan in place currently. Next slide. In terms of a mission vision, I'll leave that with you to read on your own. It's really important, these pieces that were put together just speaks a bit about what we are as Sea to Sky RCMP and what we want to do. Really particularly, I do want to focus on the important piece about, ensuring that we have transparency, accountability, inclusiveness, and integrity in response to all of our calls for service, both municipally and within the provincial areas covered by SLRD. Next slide, please. These are just basically some of our guiding principles and some of the contextual challenges that we have in the area. What's great about Sea to Sky is that there's a wide variety of different types of policing activities that we can engage in a wide variety of experiences that our members can get. From an operational context and challenges, obviously that can also pose difficulty when it comes to providing a consistent and common service across the board. We do have, tourism as a major issue in our area. We do have rapidly growing communities. There's quite a bit of backcountry work which happens because of the visitors and just the type of people that come to the community. We obviously do have emergency and disaster response involvement. So there's quite a bit of stuff going on that really has an impact on how we deliver our services. And so this is part of the reason why we need to work together to figure out what our priorities are from an SLRD perspective as well, to make sure that we're meeting those needs. Next slide, please. In terms of our strategic priorities, we've broken them into 5 main categories. Some of them are pretty generic, but they do cover a lot about what we're supposed to be doing as a police force, but also there's a couple there that are unique to us. So with crime reduction and prevention, community safety being number 1, enhancing public safety and road safety number 2, operational excellence and emergency preparedness is a new one for us that we instituted a year and a half ago, and we're going to continue with number 3. Partner for social impact is extremely important in terms of working with our partners, becoming better community members, being a better organization, but also working with our Indigenous population and having an influence on the building and bettering of these relationships. And then an important one in terms of just employee excellence and workplace culture. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. Again, a lot of this you'll be able to jump through if you want, if you haven't already read. These are just some of the initiatives that we're working on in the crime reduction prevention area. We are working on trying to increase our intelligence-led policing, and we're trying to get a Sea to Sky RCMP analyst in place, as well as working on a database for prolific chronic offenders. We're also working on creation of some local community response units. These are primarily going to be focused in the areas where they're needed the most, which would be Whistler and Squamish. But we want to have a similar type of response in the SLRD where we can, so this is definitely worth conversation. You can see here some joint patrols with CFSU, some other items there. Next slide, please. Some working on some preventative and assistance initiatives. A lot of youth and public education initiatives within our detachments. This is really important for us. Investigative standards, working on actually increasing our ability to be more effective in our policing and make sure that the documents that we're preparing are good for court and support the laying and of charges and then the successful conclusion of those through court proceedings. We have a particular focus in our area related to property violence and domestic violence. That seems to be some of the bigger things of concern, and so these are areas that we want to focus on as well over the next couple of years. Next slide. Enhancing public safety and road safety. Next slide. This goes very largely, probably without saying, we want to focus on the types of things that are really of concern in our community. So speed and distracted driving, which is the leading cause of our traffic accidents, trying to get some more proactive traffic enforcement out there. There's some equipment that we're trying to get on hand that's going to make us a bit more accessible to our backcountry areas as well. A bit more, we're trying to get a boat in the South Zone. We're trying to get some more ATVs and sleds and bikes so we can be a bit more visible and out in the backcountry a bit more. We're also doing some work on on traffic zones to try and figure out where our biggest areas of concern are so that we can actually focus on priority activities in those areas. Next slide, please. Again, we talked about rural backcountry policing. This is something that we're working on in terms of training and equipment collection so we can actually be better at those areas. and a bit more work related to communicating through social media and other means about road safety in the Sea to Sky. Next slide, please. Operational excellence, emergency preparedness. Next slide. This again is more of a training element for our members, getting our members more engaged with respect to emergency operational plans, understanding what their roles and responsibilities are regarding incident command and in response. We're working on doing tabletop exercises with our main partners so that in the event of a major incident, we're all on the same page and able to work together more collaboratively, and also just knowing that we've gone through a verbal practical exercise, better understanding of how we're going to be able to do our work collectively, and some policing elements and some equipment to make us more effective and safe when we're doing these types of activities. Next slide, please. Partner for social impact. Next slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, this is something we talked about as well. One of the things that's a priority for me is public accessibility. We are actually starting to, with COVID being effectively, I don't want to say the words, but we'll pretend effectively gone or managed effectively, so that we can say the pandemic is no longer going to have the same kind of impact it was. We want to get out and have a bit more accessibility with the public. I know that in the January, February timeframe, I'm going to be having town halls. Public town halls in the different areas. So Bowen, Squamish for the entire community, Whistler, and then Pemberton as well, to include anybody that wants to come out. We're trying to get more engagement in the local offices with members so that they can be engaged with the population, become more comfortable with us, youth opportunities, some more partnership work with our integrated First Nations folks and other partner agencies, just to become better and a partner in relation to, I'm saying that word a lot, I apologize, in terms of delivery of service on the mental health side, the things that kind of see that we're becoming more responsible for, that we shouldn't be responsible for, but we should be partners in helping that we develop a strategy to deal with some of these more critical issues that are happening. Mental health initiatives being one of those. Next slide, please. Indigenous Truth and Reconciliation is a significant one for us as well. We do have our little Thunderbird canoe, which is actually not a little canoe. It's quite a big canoe. It should be a big Thunderbird canoe, which was obtained through grant money, and it's used on a regular basis for reconciliation and other initiatives, especially with Indigenous youth. Working on training with our members, and especially with respect to the concept of trauma-informed policing. This is important related to reconciliation, but is also relevant to just dealing with people who have passed generational, intergenerational, or just trauma on their own. So, next slide, please. And then employee excellence. This is my main focus in terms of the culture and the way in which we go about doing our policing in our community. Next slide, please. I have a significant focus on health and wellness with my members, trying to get them a bit more engaged in taking care of themselves from a fitness perspective. And any way we can do that in a community-based way is great. Getting in support supports for our members locally in the event that they have themselves a traumatic incident, where they can be debriefed properly and get the support that they're required so that they can come back to work and be effective. We're doing yearly check-ins with our members from a mental health side of things as well, just to kind of make sure everything's on track. There are some things that we're doing related to local investigative training as well, just to make us better at our jobs. We're going to be doing a major focus in the next 12 months on leadership development, and not RCMP leadership development and not crazy military leadership development, but true understanding, leadership in terms of what it means to actually be a leader of people type training. I have some books I've just recently given out to my members. My favorite one being Brene Brown's Dare to Lead, which is amazing, and then Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. These are phenomenal readings, and we're going to be doing a lot of work on self-awareness so that our leaders become better within the organization. This is something that's really important to me. Next slide. Of course, performance standards. We are doing awards and recognition now. We had our regimental dining in last Friday. We started the process of actually starting to recognize our employees for some of the work. I know Mayor Elliott, who's here today, was at that session, and it was quite an amazing event. And I know that the members really appreciated being recognized. We're going to try to do that more often. And more 360 type review, which will include, working with our partners to get their perspectives on how we're performing in our work as well. Next slide. I think this should pretty much be the end. There we go. I whipped through that really quickly. I apologize if it wasn't enough, but I feel that it kind of covers it off. I wanted to leave as much time for questions as possible. I do want to reiterate that now that we're kind of moving into a new cycle, we've got a new, well, I understand it won't be that much new because everybody was pretty well acclaimed to their roles in the SLRD. Congratulations. I'd like to try to increase our engagement with you folks, so that we can be a better partner in making sure that we're doing what you guys need and what your citizens need in the area. That's it. I'm open for any questions you might have.
Thank you. Question, Director Rainbow?
Hi there, I'm Tony Rainbow. I'm the Director for Area D, and part of my area is the Upper Squamish Valley. And we have some considerable problems up there, and a sort of an attitude among some of the residents there that they don't have to worry about what they do because the police are not going to go out and do anything about it. Now, I recognize that the distance from your office, the problems in terms of the number of staff that you have. So I'm not being critical in that point of view, but you had a bullet in there that said building a business case, increase in seasonal budget. And so my question would be, what can we do? Or can we do anything to assist with that, to help you with that? Because it would certainly help us, or help me, if we could have a larger police presence out in that valley, especially during the summertime.
No, absolutely. I hear this has been an ongoing conversation with Mayor Elliott as well, on a couple different fronts. In terms of the seasonal policing side of things, the biggest thing that can be done is for local governments, the mayors and council, that when they're meeting with the UBCM and when they're doing their meetings with the ministers and other provincial officials, is to just continue to advocate for money. It is a provincial matter, that it's money that's given to us by the province for the specific purpose of seasonal policing. We know it's insufficient within the Sea to Sky. This has been communicated to my management at the Lower Mainland District on a regular basis, and they're aware of it as well, but it comes down to who holds the purse strings for this, and it is the province. I think the best thing that we can do is continue to gather the information and statistics and data that's required to speak about the impact of seasonal tourism on the areas and the impact on levels of crime. We are collecting that data, but I certainly would appreciate a strong continued pressure from the municipalities and from the SLRD against the province, just to remind them of the importance of funding for this. I do want to say as well that there was recently completed a Sea to Sky review. So this was a Sea to Sky integration review, which looked at operations with across Sea to Sky in terms of how we're doing business. And there's a very detailed examination of our statistics, from not only just crime statistics and what are the major issues, but also in terms of where those issues are taking place, whether they're provincial, whether they're municipal, and then in comparison to the number of members that we have to provide services. And there is, I think, a clear picture in the stats, especially related to Squamish, that there is a need for more provincial policing members in the Squamish SLRD area. It's not quite an imbalance in the sense that the municipal members aren't providing a significant they're not. I guess it's about the balance, whether it's provincial supporting municipal or municipal supporting provincial. I think there's a bit more of a balance there, but it's clear based on the data that there are periods of time where that's not the case, and that we need more provincial policing in the area. So we are looking at that, and we're going to be having conversations with the province over the next year to try and get more provincial members in Squamish, which would hopefully alleviate some of the concerns, or at least get more visibility in those remote areas.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we do have another delegation, so I'm sorry, Inspector, we are out of time. But we will certainly have you back and we will have more questions. And I know that we can reach you at any time to pass along any concerns or questions or opportunities to work together. So thank you very much for being here today, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much. Reach out anytime.
Thank you.
Everybody, have a good day.
All right. We now have Minto Communications coming in. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's what we're doing. That's what I see in the show, maybe in the morning.
okay. Good morning, Mr. Kalbeck and Ms. Hampton. Thank you for being here today. We are running a little bit behind time for a few reasons. So I'm sorry that you've been waiting in the waiting room all over time. I hope you're both well. We are very enthusiastic about your presentation and we'll turn the floor over to you. You have 10 minutes. So.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to present to the board today. My name is Bob Kalbeck, as you know. I'm a serving director of Minto Communications. And joining me today is Marilyn Hampton, who is also a serving director of Minto Communications and as well the secretary treasurer. Before I start, I just would like to express my sincere thanks to the SLRD board and particularly our area director for the support we've received over the past few years on our projects and what we're doing. And in particular, I would also like to give my sincere thanks to the SLRD staff who have gone above and beyond supporting us on this project and our previous projects and done a tremendous job helping us. So thank you to the SLRD staff. As a bit of background, Minto Communications is a nonprofit member-owned society. Our sole purpose is to provide high-speed internet service to the Upper Bridge River Valley. Our service area includes, oh, sorry, just changed my screen. Our service area includes the communities of Goldbridge, Braylorn, Gun Lake, Gun Creek, Tyotin Lake, and Lajoie Lake. There are approximately 440 households in the area, but growing, as statistics have shown over the last few years. And we currently provide service to 230 of those households. One thing it is important to note is that we are the sole terrestrial provider of broadband service in the area. The only other alternatives for broadband service in the area are both satellite-based, and they are Starlink and ExploreNet. TELUS, although it does provide legacy telephone service to the area, it is POTS. And at this point, they do not have the broadband infrastructure in place, nor is there a financial incentive really given the spread out nature of the community and the size of the community for them to invest a significant amount in infrastructure in the area.
Sorry, Bob, I'm just going to interrupt. Could we flip to the next slide, please? Thanks.
Thank you. So through the help of grant funding from the provincial government and the SLRD and CIRA, we recently completed an upgrade to our network. It's quite a significant upgrade, and we now operate a very modern LTE-based fixed access radio network capable of providing internet speeds of 50-10, the CRTC minimum mandated rural area requirement of 50-10. The network is connected through high capacity digital radio links and also connected to the TELUS network through a fiber connection to the TELUS radio site in Goldbridge. So on this slide, since the inception of our build and our project and our build, we've been impacted by two major federal government decisions regarding telecommunications in Canada. The first decision was regarding the previously publicly available 3.5 gigahertz spectrum band. The Ministry of Industry, Science and Economic Development, or ISED, made the decision to remove this publicly available band and auction it off to private telecom companies. As a result, the spectrum was auctioned, and Minto no longer has access rights to this spectrum, and we lose our license and must return the spectrum to ISED by the end of 2027. The second decision that recently came about and has impacted us is the federal government's decision to ban Huawei from all Canadian telecommunications networks. This mandate requires us to remove our radio equipment from our network effective 2027. So you can see that 2027 is a bit of a hard deadline and a date for us. So given that, we have essentially three broad options that we can follow over the next 5 years. One is the do nothing scenario, which really is the least palatable of the decisions and essentially would require us to discontinue service after 2027. That would mean folding Minto and leaving broadband service in the area to, at this point, either Starlink or Xplornet. The other option we have is to fully replace the existing Huawei radio equipment with an alternate equipment provider. There are issues around that. I won't go into them, but essentially it's a like-for-like replacement of what we have now. The third option we have is a more robust solution, and that's to adopt a fiber-based customer access and backhaul technology. And our recommendation is to move to the fiber-based customer access technology with fiber-based backhaul for a number of reasons. One, fiber has an exceptionally long service life, at this point, 25 to 30 years plus. It is a higher bandwidth alternative than radio and is more easily upgradable in capacity through just the applications of electronics. It does have a higher initial cost, but over the life of the fiber, it does have lower ongoing maintenance costs than radio systems. Next slide, please. So we do have an opportunity within the next little while to take advantage of the BC and federal government's recently announced $830 million fund to improve access in rural broadband communities. This is the Connecting Communities in BC fund. It is now open for the initial round of applications. Those applications for grant funding do end or are closed December 15th of this year. So we have the opportunity in the next few months to prepare a grant funding application to do an access and backhaul fiber build in the Upper Bridge River Valley. And Minto is proceeding with that opportunity. We have engaged two engineering firms. One is our ongoing consulting organization who provide us engineering support. The other is a company called Focus Communications, who specializes in the engineering, design, and installation of broadband infrastructure in British Columbia. Access to the funding would allow us to replace our existing Huawei radio gear with the customer-based technology. The benefits of this would be to allow us to continue to increase customer speeds as demand dictates. Already, it's very common to see 1 gigabit per second access offers in urban areas in the province. TELUS offers a 1 gig customer access package. Shaw, the same. So there is an increasing demand for these higher speed accesses. Fiber would allow us to provide that level of access support as required in the valley. Radio, the fixed access radio systems, given our terrain and topography, would not allow us to offer any speeds on a practical purpose above 5010. The other benefit that going to a fiber-based solution would provide is it would improve our network resiliency. Right now, we do have a very high quality backbone network, but it is not a ring-based network, and it is not survivable if one of the links goes down. Putting in a fiber-based backhaul network would allow us to implement ring technology. And if there was a route cut, that ring technology automatically reroutes through the ring to an alternate route and allows us to continue to provide service. So it does provide us with route diversity and failover capability. Next slide, please. So our ask is for the board and the SLRD to provide Minto with a letter of support to the BC and federal governments endorsing our application for funding to both install customer access fiber in the 6 communities and to install our intersite backhaul fiber and electronics to connect the communities and radio sites in a ring-based network. Thank you. That is the end of the presentation, and I will open it up to questions.
Bob, I just had one comment to add there about the government funding. The governments, when they announced this decision back in March, had also stated that this will be the last round of funding that they'll be providing to rural communities to get high-speed internet services. So
yeah.
May or may not be true, but that's what they've been stating. Thanks.
Thanks, Marilyn. That is the feedback we're getting from Network BC, is that their intent is this is the last round of funding that they will be providing to upgrade rural broadband service in British Columbia. That doesn't discount the ISED's Universal Broadband Fund on the federal level, but that is a bit difficult to access and is a lot more complex.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Do you want to take questions?
Yes, any questions?
This isn't a question, but a comment. I attended the Connecting BC session at the UBCM, and the panel was basically all big telecoms, other than one other independent service provider, which is a lot larger scale than what Minto is. And I asked a question: do small independent nonprofit ISP providers get preferential treatment in the applications? And the answer was yes, they do. They have a program there to make sure that in smaller little communities like our area are treated a little bit different with preferential treatment.
That's good to hear.
Director Birch-Jones?
This is amazing, wonderful work that you're doing, and thank you for the huge volunteer effort and expertise. And I move that we provide a letter of support for Minto Communication Society's application for funding for its proposed fiber-based infrastructure project in the Upper Bridge River Valley.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Any final comments? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much for your time and for the work that you've done for our community. We look forward to seeing this project completed, and let us know if we can assist any further. And with that, thank you also for sticking to your 10 minutes. That was bang on. Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your support.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. We're moving along to 6.1 CAO verbal update.
Madam Chair.
Nothing today. Chair's verbal update, I will save that for another time. So with that, is there any late business for committee of the whole? None on the screen. Okay. Moving along. Can I have someone move adjournment of this meeting, moved by Director Stoner, seconded by Director Birchfield. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. So now we are headed back into the regular meeting. We'll reconvene the regular meeting of the board, and we're going into 8.3. 8.13. Yeah. Yes. Very good.
Yes. We're a few minutes ahead of our schedule.
Well,
And I don't know
Celebrate.
Homer is not.
do you want to take a minute? Okay.
Okay.
Oh, we're going back to area B?
What number are we on?
We have a timed item on 8.13 that starts at 10.
Where is it?
Page
10 of your agenda.
Slow like the states.
Nice. Jenna.
It's further down, it's on page 10 of the agenda.
All right, so for the benefit of everybody watching online and for the benefit of guests here in the room, we are jumping all over the agenda. Nothing will be in sequence, so just try and keep up. It'll be an adventure today. We are going to move along to 8.13. We have Melanie Helmer here to make a presentation regarding the Lillooet Lake Estates debris flow mitigation petition for a service establishment and loan authorization. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Helmer. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Melanie Helmer, Corporate Services Consultant. And I'll give a brief discussion. Happy to take any questions at the end. The report before you today recommends that the board provide first three readings to bylaw 1786, which is proposed to establish a debris flow mitigation service for Cataline Creek at Lillooet Lake Estates, and bylaw 1787, which is proposed to provide a loan authorization to assist with the funding for the debris flow mitigation service to the extent that that funding is available to provide that. So following the board's consideration of Lillooet Lake Estates in June of this year, we received a letter from Lillooet Lake Estates, which is attachment number 1 to the report. And that provides the assurance that the board was looking for, that both the property owner and the community are in support of both establishing the service and also seeking the loan authorization. And with that project being either completed fully if there's sufficient funds, or if necessary in phases to the extent that funding's available in order to begin to move that forward. It should be noted that the $4 million loan authorization is not sufficient funds to build the debris flow mitigation structure fully, but it could be used in conjunction with grant funds as our leveraging dollars or to phase the project. So as a result of receiving that letter of assurance in the beginning of August and at the CAO's direction, staff have worked with Lillooet Lake Estates to collaboratively develop and conduct a petition. Actually, I think Gary and I have spent a lot of time working together over the past couple months. The formal legislative process requires the petition, which is the property owner petition, to be signed by at least 50% of the parcels to be charged and represent at least 50% of the net taxable value of land and improvements that are intended to be in the service area. In this case, the petition is from 100% of the property owners for the 2 parcels, and the petition includes both the service and the loan. And then in addition to that legislative process, the SLRD board has required that Lillooet Lake Estates demonstrate through a community petition that at least 75% of the site owners are in support. So the result of the petition was that 84% of the site owners petitioned for the service establishment and loan authorization from Lillooet Lake Estates community. So the service area is also Lillooet Lake Estates, and that's a portion of electoral area C, and it's as shown on the map that's attached to the bylaw. So having received sufficient petitions to meet both that legislative piece as well as the board piece, the electoral area C director could be authorized by the board now to sign on behalf of the electors in area C to provide that elector consent. When borrowing is required to establish a service, the legislation requires that both bylaws be considered together. So as a result, you'll see that the petitions, as well as the staff report, address 1786 and 1787 in combination. And if the first 3 readings are passed today and Director Max signs for Area C, the bylaws will be forwarded with the staff report and supporting information to Municipal Affairs to obtain approval from the Inspector of Municipalities. Municipal Affairs will be requested to consider approval by late November to ideally permit the bylaws to be brought back to the board for consideration of adoption at the December board meeting in order to provide an ability to commence taxation and start the work towards a debris flow mitigation service in 2023, moving towards mitigating risk to the community of Lillooet Lake Estates, and also in support of further down on the agenda if the board is supportive of the grant applications. So the actual approval time is at the discretion, complete discretion of Municipal Affairs, and is estimated to occur anytime between late October and January. And if it's approved by the Inspector of Municipalities, it needs to be submitted to BC Assessment by December 31st to be included in the 2023 revised roll, which would make it available for 2023 taxation as a parcel tax. Otherwise, it would go to the next year. So under the proposed service establishment bylaw, the maximum is either $375,000 as a dollar value or just over $10 a thousand of net taxable value of land and improvements. So whichever of those is greater. It's initially proposed a parcel tax will be applied, and Lillooet Lake Estates has told us that they intend to apportion those taxes to each of the site owners internally. And if they do that equally, which is what they've indicated their plans are, to 152 sites, that would equate to $24.67 per year, approximately. So like other service, the annual taxation will be set through the budget process, and the requisition will include the amount that's required to meet the budget, which can't exceed the maximum, but may not, it may be a lesser amount. Whatever is needed will be taxing for. So the cost of the proposed service are based on the maximum loan authorization of the $4 million, the annual operating and maintenance costs that were estimated by Kerwood-Lydell for the debris flow mitigation structure, and some other annual costs expected to be incurred, plus a contribution to a reserve fund, and a contingency has been added to address the risks associated with the cost of construction, the cost of operating and maintenance, recovery of costs to establish the service, the cost of borrowing, or any other unexpected costs that may arise. That's all been built into that $375,000. So the loan authorization is based on an interest rate of 4.39%. That was the posted rate for a 30-year term at the time the petition was conducted. Between August, when that was developed, and now, the Municipal Finance Authority's rates for 30 years has fluctuated. So it went down as low as 4.29, that I saw, and also as high as 4.48% that I saw. And as of this week, it's 4.37%, so fairly close to what we had used as a basis. This rate does fluctuate. And in addition to that being the 30-year rate, normally what happens is the rate is only locked in when borrowing occurs, and it's usually for a 10-year term to start with. And then after that, it's renewed every 5 years for a 5-year term. So the 10-year term rate is currently 4.09%. So if the recommendations are approved as presented, then staff will seek the consent of the Electoral Area C Director, compile all the documentation that's related to both of these bylaws and submit them together to Municipal Affairs for inspector approval. We'll put a project page on the SLRD's website with information about the service and the loan, and begin to prepare the package for BC assessment, and then bring the proposed bylaws back to the board for consideration of adoption after inspector approval is received, and assuming it is received. It should be noted that the work associated with this proposed service establishment, loan authorization, and then the subsequent design, engineering, and construction, and the oversight of the debris flow mitigation structure will require a fair amount of staff time, and that it will affect multiple departments across the SLRD. Over the years, a lot of staff time's already been invested, first in the response and recovery to the debris flow events, and in assisting the community with grant funding applications in an effort to get the structure built to mitigate that risk. So if the bylaws are adopted, this project's estimated to take at least an additional 2 to 4 years to complete, depending on some variability. We can't set the exact timeline yet because the potential grant funding and some of the other variables associated with engineering, design, and construction components, they're really beyond our control, or at also LLEs, and they do impact those timelines. So upcoming work will include, for example, the project oversight, the remainder of the service establishment process and loan authorization, and after the loan authorization, security issuing bylaw process, land tenure considerations, grant applications, and reporting requirements, coordinating with Ministry of Forests about the bridge and the FSR, water license application, Dike Authority Board submission, O&M contracts and agreements, insurance requirements, and detailed design and construction of the actual structure, along with the associated contracts and oversight. So if the board approves the recommendations and ultimately adopts the service establishing and loan authorization bylaws, there will be a plan for additional staff capacity to carry out the various components of this project. And it will need to be developed for your consideration and come forward to a future board meeting. So I think that summarizes it, and I would be pleased to take any questions.
Thank you. That is amount of information, and it was really clear in the report. So thank you very much, Director Mack.
Yeah, thank you very much, Melanie. That was an excellent report, and thank you for all the work. I mean, this has been going on for a number of years. So anyways, I would like to move. Do I move all the dots, or do we have to do each one, or?
I think we can do them all as a package, can't we?
We have 2/3. There's the first 3,
Right,
and then the next 1,
okay,
and then the next 2 together.
I see, okay.
Yeah,
So,
so I'll move the first 3.
okay, seconded by Director Birch Jones. Comments? Go ahead.
Also really happy to see some some movement here. And thank you, Melanie. And we know it's been a ton of work. One quick question I did want to ask though, when you're talking about the work coming and the resources required, when that comes forward from staff, are we looking at cost recovery from within the service establishment? Okay, I just didn't hear that mentioned. Awesome. I think this is great. And I'm so happy to see some traction.
Thank you. Anyone on the screen have questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. The one that bylaw 1787 cited Catalina Creek Debris Flow Mitigation Service Loan Authorization bylaw be introduced and read a first, second, and third time.
I'll move that.
Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Demare. Any comments? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And then
The next two, that's
The
can
next
go together.
two can go together. So
Okay.
moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Rainbow. Comments? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Palmer.
Mhm.
I think this first came to us 8 years ago, at least. It's
It's
great
been
to
a
see it get to this point,
And it was before that. too.
probably before that, yeah.
She didn't say it.
All right, we're now going to move along to 8.4. And Ms. Helmer is going to present regarding the Area C contribution for Pemberton District Recreation. Over to you.
Thank you.
8.14.
8.1.
8.14.
Thank you, Jenna.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this report is presented for your consideration today following the board's direction to establish a service for Area C to provide a contribution to the village of Pemberton. It's for the recreational facilities and services. So there's currently already a bylaw, number 646, and its amendments, whereby the SLRD requisitions funds from the village of Pemberton and electoral Area C together. And it's further proposed, if the bylaw 1784 moves forward, that bylaw 646 will be amended to reduce the maximum requisition. Bylaw 646 would need to be reduced as opposed to repealed because there's two associated debt issues that need to be paid out in full first. So the proposed bylaw 1784 is the next step in the transition of recreational services to the village of Pemberton that commenced several years ago. And based on the board's direction at the June board meeting, the proposed bylaw includes all of electoral area C as being the service area. The intention, if the bylaw is adopted, is to continue to collect the same amount of taxes from Area C as we have in the current 5-year financial plan for the services, with the majority being collected under this new bylaw 1784. And the debt payments that need to stay with 646 as well as Gates Lake Park at this point would continue to be collected under bylaw 646. The village will then at the same time need to start requisitioning taxes from the municipal, from everybody within the municipal boundaries for the majority of the costs that those taxpayers are contributing. And the SLRD would continue to requisition directly from both Area C and the municipality for the debt payments in Gates Lake. So if the board passes first 3 readings today, then the bylaw goes to municipal affairs to obtain approval from the inspector of municipalities. And subject to receiving that approval, then the bylaw needs elector approval. And because the maximum for this service is proposed to be not more than 50 cents per thousand of net taxable value of land and improvements, it's actually the greater of 600,000 or 49 cents and change. It's eligible for an alternative approval process or AAP. And the draft notice and elector response forms for the AAP are actually attached to the staff report that you have before you today. And that's the method of approval that's recommended in this case, because it is the most efficient and least costly to establish the service. And the cost of the service establishment has already been directed to be recovered from the existing cost center 2106. So the timelines in attachment number 3 to the staff report estimate inspector approval could occur anytime between October and January, but most likely towards the longer end of that estimate. And provided that approval is received, then public notices have to go out for the AAP, and that will include the finalized dates and times with the 30-day elector deadline. And it will take another 2 or 3 months after we get the inspector approval before it would come back to the board for consideration. If 302 electors, which represents 10% of the eligible electors in Area C, are opposed and they vote against the AAP, it's defeated. And then we would have to go to assent voting, which is like a referendum. And that would have to be conducted, which would add a few more months onto that process. So subject to receiving the first 3 readings and the inspector approval and then the AAP succeeding, the bylaw would be brought back to the board to consider adoption. And after that, an amendment to bylaw 646 would be brought to the board to consider to reduce the maximum. And the reason we would wait until then is to be sure we could continue to provide funding to the village of Pembroke.
Melanie, you're frozen.
Need to put Minto Communications on.
Yeah, we'll just give it, yeah.
I'm still talking.
Right. Disagree. This is what.
It is, this is just changing the administration, like we took over the administration a few years ago. I think it was 3 years to get out of bureaucracy. Yeah, and we govern together, right? And that's the case if you go.
Lytton wants to come into area B. Lytton wants to come into area
The
B.
map is a little easier for us.
Thompson Nicolay House is rearranging.
My apologies, sorry.
I said.
We're gonna call back to order. Thank you very much. Carry on.
Okay, so I'm almost finished here. Staff would work with the village on the media release and on a long-term service agreement for the recreation service. And so the recommendation before you today is to provide first 3 readings to bylaw 1784, send it to municipal affairs for inspector approval. And once we get that, conduct the AAP. And then if everything proceeds and it does get adopted, then we would bring bylaw 646 back. So I'm happy to take any questions on that. Sorry, my line dropped and thanks for your patience.
No problem. Are there any questions before we make any motions? Being no questions, go ahead, Director Mack.
Okay, once again, Melanie, thank you so much for all this hard work. Some of this stuff has been going on for a long time. This one, not so much, but anyways, a lot of work involved. Thank you very much. And I will move that we adopt this as presented. Can we do all of that? Yeah. We can do it all together, all of that. Okay, so I'll move.
The recommendation. Second by Director Richmond. Any comments?
Yeah, what he said. It's been a long time. It has been a few years, so.
You guys are slipping.
Great to see it.
All right, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Helmer. That was great. And we will now move along to, let's get this right. 8.15. Regarding the delegation of purchasing and related authority. Over to you, Ms. Elmer.
Thank you, Chair. So once again, a bylaw before you today. This one is for the proposed purchasing and related authorities delegation, as well as a purchasing policy. The bylaw and the policy together are intended to update our procurement practices, and the CAO, senior management, and the other staff have been involved in that process for drafting these documents, and they're designed to improve our operational efficiency, both in terms of the SLRD's operations, as well as helping streamline and improve the efficiency of the SLRD board meetings. So let's turn our attention first to the bylaw. There's a definitions section at the start. There's 3 categories of employee approval that are listed. The CAO with a proposed purchasing threshold of 500,000, the department heads with a proposed purchasing threshold of up to 100,000 and designated employees with a proposed purchasing threshold of up to 25,000. And these limits are in line with limits of other comparably sized regional districts and municipalities. So the delegation to the CAO allows him to add, edit, or remove employees, which are department heads on the organizational chart and would have the authorities associated with that. And it delegates to the director of finance so that she can, with the CAO approval, add, edit, or remove which employees are designated employees under that threshold. In addition, the CAO, the Director of Finance, and the EOC Director have delegated authority during emergency events to enter into contracts and perform related purchasing activities during emergencies, noting that if there are any such expenditures that occur, they must be reported to the board at a regular meeting. And there's a further delegation with respect to land and land use agreements that's been added to facilitate timely actioning of operational land related activities, registering, modifying, and discharging statutory right-of-ways and easements and leases, licenses of occupation of real property, as long as they fall within the applicable purchasing thresholds that are already outlined in the schedule for those classes of authorities. And buying and selling land would still require a board resolution. All expenditures must be in the approved financial plan. They can't deviate from that. And the delegation to the CAO further provides him with the ability to prescribe standard forms, templates, and procedures, provided that they're consistent with the bylaw and the policy, so that we can continue building a robust procurement practice and improving operational efficiency as we move forward. So the delegation does include delegation to the deputy or interim appointments for those positions, but there is no further delegation by a delegate. And the bylaw includes the repeal of bylaw 776 and its amendments. So now moving to the policy, it has a comprehensive definition section to start with. The objectives are outlined in the policy, and employees must have authorization as the CAO, which would come from the board, as a department head or as a designated employee in order to be able to make expenditures for the SLRD. So there's requirements outlined in the policy for purchase orders, petty cash, formal written agreements, standing orders, change orders, credit cards, gas cards, check signing, payments. There's a section for conflict of interest requirements, perceived or actual. And we've added in sustainability within the procurement process with respect to environmental, social, and ethical impacts of goods or services, as well as life cycle costing. In Schedule A to the policy, it summarizes the different procurement methods and what the thresholds of each procurement method are, and that's cross-referenced to the respective limits for the CAO, department heads, and designated employees. And then in Schedule B, it provides the application and the process for each of the procurement methods in more detail. And it gives staff guidance on when to use each method and how to proceed with procurement using that chosen method. The purchasing thresholds from the bylaw are included right in there so that it makes it easier for staff to reference in applying the policy, and they don't have to go back and forth. And then Schedule B also includes direction to staff on insurance, WorkSafe requirements, and trade agreements. And then to tie that back to the bylaw, the intention is for those procurement practices to be further developed and articulated at an operational level through that delegation to the CAO to prescribe standard forms, templates, and procedures, provided they're consistent with the bylaw and the policy. So it'll be something that will evolve with time. And then if the bylaw and policy are supported by the board today, there will be a rollout to the department heads and designated employees to support the implementation of both the bylaw and the policy. So at this time, it's recommended that the board pass first 3 readings and adopt the bylaw and also approve the policy and rescind the 2 previous policies. I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions from anybody? Go ahead, Director Stoner.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you so much, Ms. Helmer, for this work. I was really appreciative to see the inclusion of the environmental and social responsibility components into our purchasing policy. I think that is a really wise move for many reasons. But I guess I'm curious, you speak about the implementation and the rollout. I was reading through it and there was nothing in the procedures manual around how to guide staff in incorporating those values into their decision making. And so I'm just wondering how we actually action the values that we put in the policy as this rolls out.
Yeah, thank you. Good question. This is a first, oh, sorry, I think CAO Dalton wanted to say something.
I'll certainly defer to you, Ms. Helmer, first, and then I'll jump in if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, there's something ringing in the background here. I'm going to just put my headphones on. Can you guys still hear me? Yeah. Perfect, thank you. Yeah, so I think it's a really good question. It's a first baby step for us at the SLRD in incorporating this into our policy. And I think that's part of the area that our CAO is going to be able to further expand and develop as we move forward. We have just recently joined the BC Social Procurement Initiative and are moving forward with some of those fronts and are hoping to have more detail and build that into the templates, policies, and procedures so that that will give some legs to the intent that's outlined in the higher level policy document. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add that BC SPI is going to, part of that, joining that provides us, as Ms. Helmer said, with access to, mentorship, best practices, how to roll it out and train staff. So I think that's exactly how we're going to try and do that.
Thank you. Great. Any other questions from anybody? Would anyone like to make the move the recommendation as laid out in the packet? Moved by Director Mayor.
Sorry.
No, we got to do them separately.
First 2 separately, the next 2 can be together, and then the last one.
I'll move the first 2. That's
First 2.
The first one.
The first one is the first and the third reading.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Seconded by Director Rainbow. Comments? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Now moving adoption of the bylaw, moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Stoner. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And then
The next 2.
the rescind of the 2 policies, moved by Director Stoner, seconded by Director Demare. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And then approving the new policy, number 34-2022, moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Demare. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Helmer. 9.15. The grant application.
Oh, wait. When are we done?
We are going to 9.15.
Just put our each other.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's fun to watch Tony.
Page 1032.
Page 16 of 1088, it says here.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm on the old package because
That's all right.
we're all good. We're all good. Everyone good? 9.15. All right. Ms. Helmer.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, I know I contributed to some of the volume, but I think you guys are getting through it fairly quickly, and I appreciate you moving these things forward so we can make it happen. So there's currently 2 grant opportunities which are potentially a good fit for Lillooet Lake Estates. They're both a mouthful. The first is called Community Emergency Preparedness Fund Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Adaptation. And the second is the Canada BC Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Green Infrastructure, Adaptation, Resilience, and Disaster Mitigation. So in 2021, the board directed, based on the changed eligibility requirements that were associated with grants at that time, they had certain requirements for the funding component being met, and that needed to be certified. And so that was really a change that was beyond the control of the SLRD or Lillooet Lake Estates. So when that happened, it was determined the service establishment process and loan authorization process would need to be proceeding before staff could assist with future grant applications. So this report is on the agenda for consideration further down after the board would give consideration to the service establishment and loan authorization, which have now just received first 3 readings. So as a quick recap, there have been debris flow events, 9 of them since the community was built. And that's due to the terrain and the source material above the community of Lillooet Lake Estates on the Crown land. And it feeds into Cataline Creek and it travels down through the community, quite a steep descent to the lake. The most recent events were in 2010 and 2013, and assessments and reports have been completed, and they're available through the link to the last 2 attachments on the staff report that you have before you today with more detail. So the option the community selected to mitigate the risk was the debris flow mitigation structure. And although it is the most cost-effective option, there's still significant costs, especially for such a small community. So the grant funding can be a big assist in completing the full project, or can assist to complete phase 1 of the overall project. So previous grant funding applications so far have been unsuccessful, and with all the locations at risk across this province, it's expected that both of these opportunities are going to be oversubscribed. However, these opportunities also look like a really good fit for this project. And now that the service establishment and loan authorization bylaws have received first 3 readings, and we can demonstrate that, the potential for success may be improved. So the first opportunity, which is the CEPF, I'll just abbreviate it, is designed to reduce risk from future disasters. It's only open until September 30th, so tomorrow, and it provides 100% of the costs for small infrastructure projects, but only up to a maximum of $2 million. That's under category 3, and there's also 150,000 available for planning under category 1. So even in combination with the maximum loan authorization of 4 million, this opportunity, if funding was to be granted, would still probably be a phase 1 of the debris flow mitigation project. The intent would be to apply under both category 1 and 3 for the first phase of the mitigation project. And the requirements associated with the application, they're outlined in more detail in the staff report. I won't elaborate all of that here today. And there's an attachment provided with details. The projects have to be completed within 2 years of funding approval. The second grant opportunity, I'll just call it ISIP, is specifically aimed at flood mitigation infrastructure projects, including debris flows, they're specifically listed, of up to $10 million for individual communities. The provincial government would contribute up to 40,000, the feds up to 33 1/3, and that leaves the community with 26 2/3 of funding that would need to be covered. So this opportunity would permit the full project to be completed if funding were to be awarded, which is great. And the deadline to submit, actually it was October 7th, but it looks like as a result of the day of mourning last week that they've now moved it to October the 11th, the first next business day. So there's a requirement for the applicant to demonstrate where their share of the funding will come from, and the SLRD will provide a copy of the service establishment and loan authorization bylaws at 3rd reading in support of the application. The program is subject to stacking rules, meaning that other funding like gas tax, for example, can't be utilized for the applicant's share. There's an even longer and more detailed application process than the CEPF, and it includes a first step of shortlisting the application. So if the SLRD's application for Lillooet Lake Estates is to be shortlisted, we would need to complete a climate lens assessment, an Indigenous consultation, and environmental assessment by February of 2023. So there's an upfront piece of work before approval, final approval could be considered. The recommendation today is to approve submission of both grant applications. The risk to the community is characterized as unacceptable in the BGC assessment. Again, you have a link to that. And based on the District of North Vancouver's risk tolerance threshold. So securing the grant funding would be a big step forward in supporting the mitigation of this risk to the community. If the board approves the recommendations, staff will submit both the applications by their deadlines, draft and execute the required documents, update the website project page for Lillooet Lake Estates that we're going to be building, and complete the grant execution, oversight, and reporting as required. This will involve the impact to staff time that was outlined with the earlier report at item 813. And in relation to the service establishment and loan authorization bylaws report. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Question, Director Richmond.
The EA and First Nation, and there was 3 components you said had to be done by February. EA, First Nations consultation. What was the third one?
Yeah, so a climate lens assessment, the EA, and the Indigenous consultation.
So that's a pretty tight timeline. Does any of this work start in advance of the grant application, especially the Indigenous consultation?
Yeah, so there's been some ongoing Indigenous consultation that's run parallel to this project. Actually, that's been years long as well. And we have letters of support from the 4 First Nations who use the Forest Service Road for access and egress to their areas, and including Lillooet Nation provided us with a current specific approval for each of the 2 current potential applications, and have also expressed a desire to be able to be considered for the work associated with the project.
And what about the EA?
We've done some preliminary research into the EA and the climate lens, but that work, we didn't have funding to be able to complete a lot of this work up until now. And it's the service establishment that's going to provide us with the funding. But that funding, if approved, would be covered off under the grant. The grant will cover its own requirements. So the hope would be that we wouldn't want to start that work because it won't be eligible for funding unless we wait until after we have an preliminary approval that we're shortlisted. So as soon as they say shortlisted, and we're really hopeful they will, then we got to hit the ground running with those things and get them completed as quickly as possible. That'll be yeah, it is a tight timeline for a big piece of work, but that's often the way they do things with these grants. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Unless there's more questions, I'm happy to move the first grant application support.
Do you have a question?
No, I was just going to move it, but it's good. It's done.
Okay, so we're moving these separately. That the board authorized staff to work with Lillooet Lake Estates. I'm not going to read it out. It's in your package. The first that is moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Mack. Comments to the first? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Is everyone clear what we're doing? We're moving them separately. Is that right?
Two that's each. Yeah.
That the chair be chair or CAO be authorized to sign contracts and applications related. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Stoner. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And that the board authorize staff to work with LLE to submit by the October 7th deadline an application to the Canada, British Columbia Investing in Canada, etc. grant application with a funding request of up to $7.5 million, eligible costs up to $10 million. And an overall project cost of up to $12 million. Et cetera. Moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Mack. Comments? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And the final that Chair or CAO be authorized to sign the contracts and applications related to this application. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Richmond. Comments? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That was fun. Thank you, Ms. Helmer. I know that was great. Thank you very much for being here and for all of that work. Are we
Move the rest of the resolutions.
No. Unfortunately, all the reports are not as stellar as well.
Sure. Everybody, I need a 10-minute recess. If everyone can take 10 minutes, be back here by 10:50. Those online, go we can take a break and we will mute the room and 10 minutes, we'll be back.
But we need to be here for the next.
Nope, you can't hear us now. You can hear us. Karen and Barb, thank you. Took a little more than 10 minutes, but here we are. I think it'll be worthwhile. So we're back in open, but I would like a motion that we close under section 91K and 91I. Can I have someone second that motion? Moved by myself and seconded by Director Rick Jones. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We're going to take the live stream